This Parsha Podcast is dedicated in loving memory and leilui nishmat Yehuda Ben Yehhaskel Tabibian, who passed away recently. May his soul be elevated in heaven. It's an amazing Parsha this week. It's Parshas Toldos. These are the Toldos, the chronicles, or the children of Isaac. Isaac, son of Abraham. Abraham begot Isaac. Of course, we're continuing the story of our ancestors, our illustrious antecedents. We had Abraham. Abraham passed away at the end of last week's Parsha. And now we have Isaac. Isaac was 40 when he married Rebekah, daughter of Bethuel from Padan Aram, the sister of Laban. Rebekah had all sorts of reasons to become corrupt. Her father was wicked. Her brother was wicked. Her homeland were all corrupt, but she did not learn from their ways. So we have a young couple, Isaac and Rebekah, and they hit their first crisis. There is infertility. For the first 20 years of their marriage, Isaac and Rebekah don't have any children. But what do they do when they have no children? They pray. Isaac prays, Rebekah prays, and they're quite insistent in their prayer, and God hearkens to Isaac's prayer. And Rebekah becomes pregnant, and it's quite a tumultuous gestation, because she's pregnant with twins, and these twins are very different. And the babies are quarreling within her. And Rashi explains that this was like a spiritual quarrel. They're fighting, they're jockeying, they're positioning, they're jostling over the two worlds that they each embody. Jacob, of course, is going to embody the spiritual world. Esau is going to embody, of course, the physical world, and they are at odds with each other from the very beginning. Rashi tells us further that whenever Rebekah would pass the house of study, the academy, Jacob would be spiritually attracted to the Torah study, to the academy, and he would make a move and try to be born and join the ranks at the precocious age of minus a few months. And when she passed the house of idolatry, Esau, he stirred. And she went to the prophet, and the prophet told her, you have twins. There are two nations within you, and there are two powers within you that will go in their separate ways from your womb. They're going to have an inverse relationship. It's going to be zero sum. When one rises, the other must fall, and vice versa. It cannot be that Jerusalem, the seat of Jacob, and Rome, the seat of Esau, will both be ascendant at the same time. One is up, for sure the state of the other one is down, and vice versa. Jacob's up, Esau's down, Esau's up, Jacob's down. This is an incredible prophecy to be told. You're still pregnant, and you're told that you're going to have twins, and you're told that the older one is going to be not the real continuation. It's going to be the younger one. V'rav ya'avod sa'ir, and the older one will be submitted to the younger one. Rebekah has this prophecy, but she does not reveal the prophecy to Isaac. And throughout the Parsha, it's one of the themes of the Parsha. Rebekah has loads of prophecies, 4 prophecies by my count, and she does not reveal any of them to Isaac. Number 1, Jacob will be ascendant over Esau. She doesn't tell that to Isaac. When he was trying to bless Esau, and he spoke to Esau exclusively, and the verse tells us, 27:5, that Rivka heard when Isaac spoke to Esau, his son. Isaac was speaking exclusively to Esau, but she heard it prophetically. She wasn't eavesdropping, the commentaries tell us. She wasn't snooping. She was a prophetess. When Jacob is told, go steal the blessings, go usurp the blessings, she was able to confidently tell Jacob that no curse will befall him. Why? Because she was told that prophetically. And finally, 27:42, Esau plans internally to kill Jacob, and he doesn't divulge those plans to anyone. He spoke to his heart, he spoke to himself, but nevertheless, Rebekah knew Esau's plans, and that's why she took steps to have Jacob flee. So Rebekah is experiencing all sorts of prophecies, and none of them were conveyed to Isaac. And it's important to note, if you're a prophet, and they might reveal something to you, it's given to you for a reason. It's a sign that he wants you to do something about it. He wants you to play a part in his plans, but it's not necessarily your job to convey to others. Every time Moshe was taught something, and he taught it to us, the verse says, God spoke to Moshe, saying, go tell this onward. If you're not told that, well then, you remain mute. She does not reveal the prophecies to Isaac, but she takes very concrete steps. She works assiduously to try to actualize those prophecies. And there's some very unusual birth anecdotes. Esau is born first, and he's admoni, he's ruddy, and he's all hairy. And Jacob, he doesn't have those features. They're twins, but they appear to be very different. And even though Esau emerges first, Jacob emerges clutching onto his heel. And this is not just an insignificant cute little anecdote. It's maybe the defining characteristic of Jacob. Jacob is called Jacob because the Hebrew word Yaakov and the Hebrew word for heel, Akev, it's the same shorish, same root. The essence almost of Jacob is this little event of him clutching the heel of his twin brother. So Rashi, of course, reveals some of the reasons behind that. For one, a very interesting midrash, very strange midrash, Jacob wanted to be born first because Jacob had a legitimate claim that he was really the firstborn. Why? Because he was conceived first. And Rashi offers this analogy. If you have like a cylinder and you put in 2 rocks into the cylinder, so you put the rock number 1 in, you put rock number 2 in. When you want to take them out, you put you take out the second one out first. And that was Jacob's argument. Very interesting. You came out first, but I went in first. And therefore, on some level, to some degree, I'm more senior. And that's why he emerges first. Esau emerges first, but Jacob's like, no, I really belong first. I'm really older. I'm really more senior. Very strange, very bizarre. We don't know who gets conceived first. In all the law, it's who's born first. But this is what Rashi tells us. And I want to maybe suggest just a little insight that if Jacob is clutching the heel of Esau, that does reveal that some small percentage of Jacob is actually emerging before some small percentage of Esau. So yeah, Esau was born first and he emerged first, but maybe the fingertips, so to speak, of Jacob did actually emerge before the heel of Esau, and that is significant. There's going to be some element of Jacob that is going to be, by all accounts, emerging first before Esau. But again, it's a very interesting comment that Rashi offers that needs an explanation. Then Rashi offers a second explanation. This is a sign. It's a symbolism that before Esau will finish his work, Jacob will come and take it from him. Now, the commentaries offer other interpretations. The heel, says the Seforno, that is a sign to the end of an empire. So a nation can be very ascendant, and then comes the time where they're kind of at the end, at the last moment, they're heel. And once their ends arrive, they're gone. But Jacob is always clutching on to the ends, meaning he's like bulletproof to heels. And that's maybe the symbolism of Jacob clutching the heel. And then there's the Midrash. The Midrash tells us that Esau was on a warpath. Esau was born, he's all red. Why is he red? He's red because he savaged his mother's womb. And the commentaries tell us Rebecca was really destined to have 12 sons. And she ended up with 2. And the reason why she ended up with 2 is because Esau destroyed her womb. And all the blood, all the redness was all absorbed by Esau. And his real plan was, says the Midrash, very interesting, his real plan was to close the door, so to speak, so Jacob would suffocate. And Jacob's only solution to survive was to grab onto the ankle of Esau. Esau, buddy, if you're going, I'm coming with you. There's no way for you to escape and leave me behind. Very fascinating, very intriguing. Midrash with to know what this all means. Again, that's a little bit backstage, but that's what we're trying to do here. Year 10, the Parsha Podcast. Now, Isaac loves Esau because he eats from his game. Esau is a man of the field. Jacob wants to sit in the tent. Esau is a trapper. Jacob is wholesome, dwells in the tent. And Isaac loves Esau, and Rebekah loves Jacob. And then we read that Jacob is making lentil stew. And Esau is exhausted. And my grandfather last me used to say, this does not mean that the Torah is telling us the level of adenosine that Esau had. It's not telling us about the circadian rhythm of Esau. It's telling us that he was spiritually exhausted. On that day, the Talmud tells us, Esau committed 5 grievous sins. He murdered, he blasphemed, he did heresy, he rejected the eternality of the soul, he ridiculed the birthright, and he raped a young woman. And he comes home spiritually exhausted, and Jacob's making a lentil soup, a stew of lentils. Why is Jacob making a stew of lentils? So our sages tell us, this is the traditional food given to the bereaved. Isaac was bereaved. On that day, Abraham died. And Esau wants the lentil soup, and Jacob agrees to give it to him in exchange for his birthright. Esau is halachically the firstborn. So he has that extra spiritual responsibility. He's going to serve at the temple. He's going to be the priest of the nation. It was only much later when the priests became the Levites, and each firstborn conveyed, so to speak, their holiness to their corresponding Levite. That's what it meant to be the firstborn, to have birthright. But of course, it came with some perks, such as the rights to the blessing. More on that in a bit. Esau says, I don't need the birthright. I'm going to die. What difference does it make? He sells it. He swears. And indeed, that transaction happens. The Parsha continues. There's a famine. Isaac travels to Gerar. God tells him, you cannot travel down to Egypt. Abraham, after all, did travel to Egypt during the famine in his days. But Isaac must always remain in the Holy Land. Like Abraham, the foreign rulers covet Isaac's wife. But again, the foreign ruler, Avimelech this time, is prevented from taking her. Isaac becomes prosperous. People are envious of him. And they clog up, they stuff up, they fill up his well, and they plug the wells. And they dig for another well, and they find water, but then they quarrel over it. And the first well is called Asek, meaning a confrontation. They fought over it. And the second well is called Sitna, which means thwarting or a hindrance. And then he travels to a third place, and he digs a third well, and this one is unchallenged, and this one's called Rehovot. And then Isaac travels to Beersheba, and God appears to him, God blesses him, he builds an altar, he calls out in the name of God in the way that Abraham did. And again, they dig, and they find a well. And he makes a treaty with Avimelech, and that's why this is called Beersheba, because the word Be'er means well, and the word Sheva means to swear, to make an oath, like an oath of a treaty. Lots of emphasis on wells. Wells that he dug, wells that were plugged up, wells that were fought over, wells that became the namesakes of cities. What's the meaning of all the wells? So the Rabban already tells us the wells, they refer to the temple. A temple is like a wellspring of spiritual vitality. You go to the temple and you're empty spiritually, and you come up and you pull up, you're able to draw all the spiritual waters and emerge full. And the first temple, like the first well, was destroyed. The second temple, like the second well, was destroyed. And the third one, may it be rebuilt speedily, will endure forever. Esau marries at 40. Even though he was a rotten rascal for 40 years, he pretended to be as righteous as Isaac. Isaac, my father, after all, he got married at 40. I'll do the same. But the wives that he chose were a source of grief for his parents. They were idolaters. And the next part of the Parsha is a very memorable episode the usurpation of the blessings. When Isaac was old, he became blind. Now, why did Isaac become blind? So Rashi offers 3 reasons. The first reason, it's juxtaposed to the event of the wives of Esau. They were doing idolatry in the house of Isaac. And they would offer sacrifices and incense offerings to their deities. And the smoke of the incense offering of Esau's wives, that's what blinded Isaac. That's the first interpretation that Rashi says. Now, the problem with it is, Isaac, because of the idolatry of his daughters-in-law, he lost a sense. But which sense did he lose? He didn't lose the sense of smell. He lost the sense of sight. Later on in the Parsha, he does smell Jacob. So obviously he doesn't lose the sense of smell, even though he's smelling the idolatrous incense. So the Midrash offers a bit of a twist to this idea. It's not that the incense blinded him, but God blinded him in order to spare him the pain of having to witness the spiritual deterioration of Esau and his wives. So that's the first idea. That's why Isaac became blind. The second idea, very dramatic. Isaac, many years prior, he was bound atop an altar on Mount Moriah. And his father wanted to slaughter him. This is the binding of Isaac. And at that moment, Rashi tells us, the heavens opened, and the angels crowded around to witness this. And the angels were crying, and their tears dropped into Isaac's eyes. And therefore, his eyes became dim. They became blind. What a dramatic idea. During the binding of Isaac episode, the heavens were opened, and the angels were crying as they were witnessing, and the drops fell into his eyes. He's obviously facing upward, right? He's bound on top of the altars, looking upwards, and the tears, the angelic tears, are dropping into his eyes. Now, what this means, it's a great mystery. First of all, what's the idea of angel tears? Angels have tear ducts that dropped into Isaac's eyes? Seems very strange. It's also interesting that the heavens were opened. That sounds a lot like the description of Mount Sinai. That God tore open the heavens, and he showed the nation that there's nothing besides for God. But the angels, if God wants to show the angels this event that's happening down below, you don't imagine he needs to open the heavens. You imagine the angels can witness it even without the heavens being opened. Now, why are they crying? The whole concept of angelic tears doesn't make any sense to us, but why were they crying? And also, why did it not cause immediate blindness? According to our sources, Isaac was 37 at the time of the binding and is now 123. It's been more than 80 years. Why is the damage to his eyes from the event of the binding, why is it only happening now? So it's a very mysterious comment in Rashi, and Rashi offers a third interpretation, that this was a divine intervention in order to facilitate the usurpation of the blessing. Very interesting. And the Midrash offers 2 more interpretations. Why did Isaac's eyes dim? Very scary idea. Because he looked at the image of Esau, the wicked. Isaac was looking at Esau, and that's just damaging to pure eyes. Very, very interesting. Very frightening. And finally, Isaac would enjoy the game, the food of Esau, and that was a form of bribery And just as the verse tells us in the Torah that bribery blinds the eyes of the wise, because Esau, he was given food, that was a form of a bribe, and Isaac imbibed, so to speak, that bribe, his eyes became blind. Regardless, Isaac is blind, and he summons his elder son Esau. I'm old, I don't know when I'm going to die, I want to bless you before I die. So go hunt some game, bring it to me, and I'll bless you. Now Rebecca overhears, prophetically as we mentioned, and she hatches a plan. She was privy to the prophecy that Jacob is the one that should triumph, and she took steps to actualize that prophecy. And it's sort of a cockamamie plan. Jacob, you're going to impersonate your brother Esau. Pretend to be a big bad brother, and we will serve our father the delicacies that he likes, and you'll get the blessings. Now, Jacob is very reluctant to do this. What if Isaac discovers the ruse and curses me instead? Don't worry. It won't happen. If it does, I will absorb those curses. What if he feels me up and says I'm actually Jacob, I'm not Esau? Well, let's put on some of Esau's clothing. Jacob has no choice, and he's forced to listen to his mother. And he enters with the delicacies, and it seems like Isaac is sensing that something is awry. Who are you? And Jacob says, I am, long pause, Esau, your firstborn. Sort of could be interpreted as not a lie, because I am who I am. Esau is your firstborn. Long enough pause. Not technically a lie, maybe. Certainly a deception. And Isaac says, something seems a little fishy here. The voice is the voice of Jacob. The hands are the hands of Esau. But nevertheless, he accepts. Jacob gives him some wine. Where's the wine from? Or say to say it's from the Garden of Eden. He comes in with the aroma of the garden, and he receives a blessing. May God give you mital hashamayim, the dew of the heaven, the fats of the land, and lots of grain and wine. Peoples will serve you. Nations will bow before you. Havei dvir la'achecha. You will be a master over your brothers. And the sons of your mother will bow before you. And finally, those who curse you will be cursed, and those who bless you will be blessed. Jacob hightails out of there, and just as Jacob leaves, Esau enters. And he has his game, and he's ready for his blessing. I got bad news, Esau. There was a usurper here. Someone came and took him. And Esau cried out a great, bitter cry and asked for a blessing nonetheless. And Isaac responds, I'm sorry, can't help you. Vayomer, verse 35 of chapter 27. Ba achicha b'mirma, your brother came with deception, with trickery. V'yikach b'chasecha, and he took your blessing. And even though Isaac discovers the ruse, he reaffirms the blessing to Jacob. He endorses it, even though he was intending to do something else. And there's different reasons why Isaac reaffirmed the blessing. According to one opinion of the Midrash, the last part of the blessing is those who curse you will be cursed. And therefore, Isaac was unable to reverse the blessing and to try to curse Jacob, because whoever curses Jacob will be cursed. And therefore, it will be a self-curse to curse Jacob. Regardless, he carves out a blessing for Esau as well. Al char b'chatichya, you will live upon your sword. Yes, you will have to serve your brother, but you will be able to remove his yoke from upon your neck when he fails to fulfill his mission. Jacob, he's going to be the continuity. He's going to have the blessing of Abraham. And he's going to have the blessing of prosperity that was intended for you, Esau. You're going to be subjected to Jacob. But you live on your sword. And that sword can actually come for Jacob, provided that Jacob is not doing what he needs to do. And the parsha ends with Esau pledging in his heart to kill Jacob. When my father dies, I'm going to kill him. And Rebekah prophetically knows about this plot, and she takes action to save Jacob. And she tells Isaac, I don't want Jacob to marry a Canaanite. Let's send him away to my family. He'll marry one of my nieces. Isaac agrees, and they send him off. And of course, next week is going to be, okay, what happens with Jacob once he is departing from his homeland and going to meet another person to wrangle with? Of course, that's going to be Laban. It's absolutely an amazing parsha. I want to go a bit backstage on some of the big themes of the parsha. The parsha begins, Isaac and Rebekah are married. Isaac was 40 when he marries Rebekah, and he's 60 when they have twins. In between, there's 20 years of infertility. And it's a theme. Abraham and Sarah were infertile. Isaac and Rebekah, infertility. Jacob, at least with his principal wife, Rachel, she's infertile. Why is there so much infertility in this founding fathers and mothers of our people? So there's a very interesting teaching in the Talmud. In the book of Yevamos on page 64a on the bottom, why were our forefathers infertile? And the answer is so surprising. Because the Holy One, blessed is He, mita'aveh, desires, covets the prayers of the righteous. Nothing inspires prayer quite like infertility, the Talmud tells us, or the Talmud implies. And the Almighty deliberately causes infertility in order to inspire, to prompt them to pray. Very interesting. And of course, it comes with some questions. God wants something? God doesn't want. God doesn't need our prayers. That's a good question for a different time. But there's another idea. You gotta be backstage to appreciate this idea. We say that the forefathers and the foremothers, the patriarchs and the matriarchs, were infertile. But let's look at it very closely. Turns out not all of them were infertile. Abraham and Sarah, they're both infertile. Sarah is an explicit verse, 11:30. Vatihi Sarai Akara. Sarah was infertile. Ein la valad. She has no valad, which means no children, but also means no womb. She did not have the hardware to produce babies. Now, with regards to Abraham, there's a Rashi in 16:5. The Rashi proves that Abraham himself was also infertile. He prayed to have his infertility healed. And Sarah accused him of not praying for her as well. So with Abraham and Sarah, they're both infertile. What about Isaac and Rebekah? So if you read the verse at the beginning of the parsha, Isaac is praying opposite his wife, Ki akara he, because she is infertile. Here we see very clearly, the Torah tells us explicitly, Isaac was not infertile. Rebekah was. And what about the third generation, Jacob and his wives? Although it would seem that only Rachel was infertile, you can actually deduce from Scripture that Rachel and Leah were both infertile. Why? Because the verse says, 29:31, Vayar Hashem, and God saw that Leah was hated, and He opened up her womb. But Rachel remained infertile. They were really both infertile. It's just that Leah was given fertility prematurely. It wasn't natural fertility. It was a miracle of fertility. Why? Because she was suffering by being not quite as loved as Rachel. So if you look at the 7 founding parents, if you will, the 4 parents, with regards to the patriarchs, only Abraham was infertile. And all 4 of the matriarchs, Sarah, Rebekah, Rachel, and Leah, were all infertile. So what's happening over here? So it's a very interesting idea. I saw it quoted from the Ben Ish Chai. We talk about our origins, our pedigree, where we come from. Who are the founders of our people? So, of course, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that's the patriarchs and the matriarchs. Well, what about Abraham's father? A gentleman by the name of Terach. He's also one of the fathers of our people because he's Abraham's father. What about Sarah's father, Abraham's brother, Haran? He too is a great-great-granddaddy of ours. Why are they not considered our antecedents? Commentaries tell us this is why the Almighty made Abraham and Sarah infertile. They were physiologically incapable of continuing the legacy of Terach. It was only a miracle that gave them fertility. Why they have the miracle? Abraham is 100 years old. Sarah's 90. They have a child. It's a miracle. This miracle is due to the righteousness of these two people. And therefore, when we've looked at the continuity of children, we say, okay, well, there's the previous generations, and then there's the new generations. There's like a chain here with multiple links. But with this infertility, they weren't just passing on like the genes. Healthy people, most people, the majority certainly, they have the ability to procreate. And that's just one of the natural rules of the world. That's the way people do it. When Abraham and Sarah had a baby at 90 and 100 respectively, that's a brand new start. That's not because, they just inherited the ability to procreate from their parents. No, they had no ability to procreate from their parents. It was from God. And therefore, this new chain, this brand new start, is a brand new start, a fresh beginning that's not attributable to the past. Now, Isaac is born from Abraham and Sarah. So there's no need for him to suffer from infertility. He's continuing the legacy, the line of Abraham and Sarah. But Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, they come from very troubled pedigrees. Nahor and Bethuel and Laban, still going back to Terach. So if they have natural fertility, then you can make a very credible argument that your antecedents, Jewish people, is Terach, is Nahor, is Bethuel, is Laban. Those are not the forces that we want to perpetuate amongst our people. Our forefathers are Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, Leah, and not Terach and Haran and Nahor and Bethuel and Laban. And that's the reason why there's this targeted, divinely orchestrated infertility with a miracle of fertility in order to make sure that the nation, the sole progenitors of the nation are indeed the patriarchs and the matriarchs. Very sophisticated, very deep way to understand this repeating pattern, this repeating theme of infertility among our antecedents. There's another big theme in the Parsha. The wells. Isaac is fighting over wells, he's digging wells, he's mentioning wells, he's talking about wells, the wells are plugged up, and he redug them, he dug new ones, they fought over them, he named the city Beersheba after the well. What's this emphasis on wells? What's the deeper meaning? So there's a very profound idea with very wonderful implications for us, I think. Comes courtesy of the Sfas Emes. You think about a well. A well is a wonderful thing. You got fresh water. Dig a hole, drill deep enough, and you get to the waterbed, and there's fresh water. Now, there's other sources of fresh water. You go to a big lake or even a sea, a freshwater sea. You have other sources as well, but something special about the well. Where do you find a well? The well is always hidden. It's always hidden. And it's hidden in a place where there is no water. What do you see? There's just dirt. And somehow, beneath the ground, hidden from your eyes, there's a source of fresh water, of life-giving fresh water. So the Sfas Emes says, very profound idea. At the root of everything is holiness. At the root of everything is spirituality. You look at a barren land, you see dirt, you see an empty wasteland. There's no hint anywhere of water. The process of digging a well is understanding that behind the facade of the wasteland, of the barren, devoid wasteland, is water. We could go down to the roots, and we could discover the holiness and the spirituality that lies beneath. And really, there are two ways to get spirituality, almost like two ways to get the water. Either it's there's spirituality, there's water, or it's not there. But it actually is. It's hidden. Beneath the deep shell, if you drill down deep enough to the roots, you discover the hidden spirituality, the hidden water beneath the facade. Isaac was someone who was always looking to discover the righteousness and the holiness that lay beneath the facade. Why does he favor Esau over Jacob? The Torah tells us explicitly that they grow up, and Esau is a man of the fields. He wants to hunt. He wants to be he's a very much a man oriented around the earth. And Jacob, look at him. He's wholesome. He wants to sit in the tent, he wants to study. Isn't it obvious where the continuity of the nation should be? And somehow, Isaac favors Esau over Jacob. And at least on a simple level, he envisioned the future of this great line, the future of the great nation of Abraham, it should be fulfilled with Esau and not with Jacob. Why? Jacob is a massive, undeniable reservoir of holiness, of water, an endless supply of fresh water, an undeniable, overt source of water. What about Esau? You see Esau, a man of the field, seems so distant from spirituality. But Isaac is a well digger. And there's a project here. Let's drill. Let's find the hidden subterranean holiness of Esau. That's what Isaac was after. And Isaac understood that when you discover the hidden water, the hidden holiness, it's way more valuable. It's way more cherished. We don't believe in living a life of monastic asceticism. In our view, the highest ideal is not some old celibate, at least allegedly, man with a kippah. Yes, there may be room for denial of physicality and materialism, but to live a life of trying to be saint-like and completely eschewing the physical world, that's not something we do on a permanent level. And actually, we view that as being on a lower level than drilling a wellspring amidst the desert. The highest level is uncovering the hidden subterranean holiness that may have been invisible. There's nothing that we believe is devoid of holiness. There's nothing in our life that cannot be a mitzvah. Every single deed that we do can be a mitzvah. Of course, we eat, you make a blessing. That's a mitzvah. You sleep and say, I have the intention of having strength to do the service of God. That's a mitzvah. You can procreate. It's actually the first mitzvah. To engage in business, in commerce, with integrity, that's a wonderful mitzvah. You're in the world. Where's God and holiness and purity and righteousness? Doesn't seem to be part of it. It's a mitzvah. In fact, the Talmud tells us that when someone arrives at the heavenly tribunal, the first question that is posed to them is, did you do business with integrity? We have a concept called a nazir. That's someone who takes a month to eschew physicality. It's not a full-time gig. And in fact, when the Nazir finishes his term of denial of physicality, he has to bring a sacrifice because he caused himself unnecessary pain. And you know what? It may be an important temporary measure to close yourself off from the world, to wean yourself off from a way of hedonism and materialism, but that's not the highest level. When you look at a barren field, totally physical, and you find a way to drill down deep until you discover a wellspring of holiness, Isaac is teaching us that's the highest level. And it seems that if things were different, if Esau made different choices, if he found a way to use all of his gifts and the way he was positioned, to use that for good, had he marshaled all of his talent and abilities and opportunities for good, he would have been on a higher level than Jacob. But alas, he fumbled the ball. He didn't dig the well, and he missed on that opportunity. One final idea, very much a big idea, and a topical one too. After Jacob usurped the blessings, Esau hated him, and his hatred to him was unmitigated, and he was planning on killing him. Once my father passes, I don't want to cause pain to my father. Once he passes, I will kill Jacob. Now, how long did Esau's hatred last? So we know, we've read the Torah already, Parshas Vayishlach. It's 34 years later. And Esau is still so angry, he still wants to kill him. He comes with 400 warriors with very violent designs. How does the hatred not dissipate? How does it endure for such a long time? What's the deeper insight behind the hatred of Esau? Moreover, if you look at what Isaac tells Esau after the ruse is discovered, it seems like Isaac is further exacerbating the hatred that Esau would naturally have. Ba achicha b'mirma, your brother came with deception and trickery and stole your blessing. It seems like Isaac is goading Esau to hate his brother. You think about it, we have laws related to slander and gossip that do not cause unnecessary hatred, and certainly not to foment and increase hatred. That would be a very serious violation of Lashon Hara. And that's exactly what Isaac is seemingly doing. Esau, I have bad news. Someone stole what's yours. And who did it? Your brother did it. Your brother came with trickery, with deception, and stole your blessings. What is Isaac trying to accomplish by telling Esau that? Now, if Isaac wanted to curse Jacob, that would make maybe a bit of sense. But ultimately, Isaac reaffirms the legitimacy of Jacob's blessings. He agrees that Jacob is deserving of those blessings. So why does he foment hatred? And the truth is, we talked about Esau 34 years later. There's a very interesting comment in the Midrash. It's actually cited by Rashi in 33:4. Rashi says that the hatred of Esau to Jacob is like a halacha. It's a law. It's an unchangeable law. It's a halacha. It's a known law. Esau sone Yaakov. Esau hates Yaakov. We have a name for this hatred. It's called anti-Semitism. And this, we're told, this is one of the origins of that ubiquitous and execrable hate. Now, this is not the first mention of anti-Semitism in Genesis. Way back in chapter 15, in Parshas Lech Lecha, there is the covenant between the parts, bris ben abasarim. God tells Abraham, you should surely know that your descendants will be foreigners in a foreign land, and they will enslave them and torment them and oppress them for 400 years. He's telling him about the exile. And then if you read that exchange and that narrative, we read how Abraham was plunged into an intense dread and an intense darkness that descended upon him. And our sages tell us that Abraham witnessed prophetically all the exile and all the suffering and all the travails and torment and abuse and mistreatment that his descendants will experience. Abram's given a window into a future where his descendants will suffer tremendously, will be hated tremendously by their oppressors. Now, why did Abram have to have that vision? What's the origin of Abram being told these terrible things? Got to read it very carefully. It starts off, chapter 15. God tells Abraham, "You're good. I got your back. I'll protect you. Your children will be numerous and will multiply and will proliferate." And he asked a question. How do I know? And the commentaries tell us, this does not mean that Abraham had a lack of faith. No. Abram wanted to know how the nation will endure. The eternal nation will endure forever throughout all the years. What's being asked of Abraham and his people is a lot. To retain a certain identity and a certain mission and a destiny. And this path that Abraham embarked upon and that his descendants perpetuated, it's a sacred, vital, critical path to bring the world to perfection, to bring the world to completion, to complete what Abraham started. It's going to be a long-winded path. And so much chaos and upheaval is going to happen. How do we know that the nation won't fall off track? How do we know that people, not everyone's going to have the same fiery inspiration and passion and the inner wellspring of faith that Abraham had? How will this project have eternal endurance? How do I know that I will inherit the land? And God says to him, the answer is exile. The answer is hatred. The answer is anti-Semitism. That dark, dreadful, bitter exile that Abram was shown is an answer to this question. This is profound and not inspiring and certainly sobering. Abram's being told that the very difficult and dark periods of his nation's history will have a productive use. And as hard as this is to process, it will have a benefit, a great benefit, and will serve as a great blessing, as counterintuitive as that sounds. Abraham, he's the one who stands up against the entire world. He's told the Ivru, we mentioned this in the past. He's willing to be against the entire world and to say to every other person in the world, you're wrong. And I'm willing to die for my belief because I'm right. And I don't care about anything else besides for the truth. That is what Abraham stands for. And you know what? Abraham, he's the paragon of being so strong in his belief, so strong in his convictions, being willing to stand up to the entire world. But what happens when it's Abraham's grandchild and great-grandchild, and it's 10 generations, 50 generations later? How are the Abrahamites going to stand up to the whole world? And historically, we know this is true. Our nation doesn't like to be all alone. We crave acceptance at the hands of the nations. And we have a tendency to seek assimilation, integration, and acceptance. We want to be welcomed and appreciated and loved. And that is a very seductive bribe that dangles in front of our eyes. And what would happen if Abraham and Abraham's descendants cross over to the other side of the river and they just join the ranks of all of humanity on that other side of the river? And his nation becomes a nation like any other nation, accepted by everyone else. That would feel good maybe, but that would amount to the dream of Abraham being shattered and the mission and the destiny of Abraham being terminated. And that's not tolerable. And Abram asks God, how will I know? How do I know that this will endure? What guarantee can you afford me? What can you give me? What assurance can you give me this won't happen? Then God said, I'll give it to you. It's not pleasant. It's dark. It's scary. It's dreadful. But you still prefer that than to disappear. And now, Isaac is entrusting Esau with playing that role. His role to play is to be the guard to make sure that Jacob stays true to his path. Your brother came with trickery and stole your blessing. He ignited a flame of hatred that will never subside, at least until the arrival of Messiah. You will live upon your sword, he tells him. You will be ready to strike whenever Jacob veers off his path. There's a direct inverse relationship between our tendency to go off path and the irrational eruption of hatred from Esau to Jacob. And this hatred is not diminishable, not in 34 years, not in 3,400 years. And yes, sometimes the hatred is quieted. When Jacob is on the right path, the hatred goes dormant. And when it goes dormant, there's no hatred. There's acceptance. And there's integration. You're welcome. We love you, Jacob. There's a temptation to lose your identity, to cross over to the other side of the river. You got too close. That irrational, inexplicable, unreasonable, illogical hatred of Esau flares up. Our sages tells that this reached a crescendo at Sinai. The Hebrew word for hatred is also Sinai. Sin'ah, Sinai, same word. Says the Midrash, once our nation cemented a permanent commitment to irrevocably, we will do or we will listen. We will do whatever it takes to fulfill the mission of Abraham. We're forever going to be on the other side of the river. Once we said that at Sinai, the sinah, the hatred of Sinai, went into full and permanent effect. Everyone today is trying to figure out the reason for anti-Semitism. All sorts of books have been written on the subject. Even a United States senator who has the audacity to call himself the guardian of Israel, he wrote a book on the subject. And a lot of people have sensed a rise in anti-Semitism in the West of late. What's the reason? Everyone's trying to figure out the reason for this. And every argument and every presentation of an argument of this hatred, this oldest hatred in the world, and this hatred which is so virulently expressed, no explanation is complete. Oh, the Jews, they're outsiders. Well, there's a lot of outsiders. They get integrated. Jews were the ultimate insiders in Europe. They lived there for 1,000 years. And the greatest eruption of Jew hatred happened in Europe. Jews lived in America for a very long time. And even though I want to stress, we're not comparing the anti-Semitism today in America to the way it was, in Europe or in other places throughout history, I am not delusional enough to think that a very violent and virulent strain of anti-Semitism is impossible in this country. Oh, the Jews, they're hated because they killed the Christian God. Well, there are billions of Muslims who hate the Jews. And when the murderous monsters from Hamas were killing Jews, they were not saying, let's kill the Zionists or the ones who killed JC. They were screaming in Arabic, let's kill the Jews. Why do they hate the Jews? Jews are so rich, they're so poor, they're so successful, so unsuccessful. They're parasites who leech off the government. They're titans of industry who run everything. Zionism, that was touted as the ultimate solution. You'll have your own land, and your own country, your own place. You'll be out of the hair of all your enemies. And you'll be a nation like all other nations. You'll finally be accepted. And instead of solving anti-Semitism, the Jewish state is now a very powerful target for anti-Semitism. It didn't solve it. Every explanation of anti-Semitism is not complete. This is what Exodus tells us. This is the real reason. It goes back to Abraham, covenant of the parts. It goes back to Sinai. And it goes back to Isaac telling Esau, he came, he stole your blessing with trickery. And yes, he is igniting a hatred that will not dissipate for a very long time. And he knows that. That's the role that Esau has to play. You cannot solve anti-Semitism, at least not till Messiah comes. Messiah comes, every person has a soul to declare that God is true and that we are his people. But until then, Jew hatred will be a feature of our existence. And counterintuitively, it's actually the answer to Abraham's question. How do I know that for thousands of years in all the lands in the whole world, the people that are going to come from me, the nation that will come from me, they will have the strength to do what I'm doing? This is the answer. It's not a pleasant idea. It's not inspiring. It's not fun. It's very demanding. Anti-Semitism is a security guarantee given by God to Abraham, and reinforced at Sinai. And here, Esau has a role to play with as well. You will remain a standalone nation on the side of the river that Abraham blazed the path on, committed to fulfilling his mission. That's the guarantee that Abraham sought, and that's the guarantee that he got. And at Sinai, the nation accepted the enforcement mechanism. And in our parsha, Esau is tasked by Isaac to implement this vital and critical and indispensable role. Your brother stole, Esau, he stole your blessing with trickery and deception. He stole it from you. And you're going to live on your sword. And you're going to be subject to your brother unless he veers off the path. Then you will control him. Anti-Semitism is a real problem, and it's not going away until Messiah. You may be able to address some of the symptoms, sure, but you will never fix the problem. Because this is what the Torah says. This is the reason why we have it. It's like a zapper that stops someone from doing something way worse, from doing irrevocable self-harm. It's like a small penalty that prevents a much larger disaster. And we can keep it dormant. If we accept the yoke of God completely, that will free us from the yoke of Esau, of Ishmael, and anyone else. There's a blessing here given to Esau, and it's also a backhanded blessing to us. We know how we can survive. The first outburst of Esau's anti-Semitism on a national level that happened when Amalek, the nation, or one of the nations of Esau, attacked the Jewish people right after the Exodus in a place called Refidim. The Talmud tells us the word Refidim means Rafu Yedehem. Their hands became weak. We became spiritually weak. And that's why we were vulnerable. We've been entrusted with a sacred mission. If we do our job perfectly, not only will we avoid all hatred, we will have admiration. And we will bring the world with us to a better place, to a better time. May we be so fortunate to witness that day. I appreciate you listening to this edition of the Parsha Podcast. Parshas Toldos, year 10 of the Parsha Podcast. Have a wonderful day, a fantastic rest of your week, and of course, a magnificent, terrific, splendid, and uplifting Shabbos this week. And please God, with the help of the Almighty, we'll gather together again next week. Please God for another edition of the Parsha Podcast from the Torah Center in Houston, Texas. And of course, my email address is rabbiwolbe@gmail.com.